Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Welcome all panelists. Welcome all audience. Good afternoon once again. At this time, we are going to present a session titled Sustainable Energy Islands to Enable Energy Technology Landscape. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Alifia from Energy Investment Management, and I'm going to be the moderator for the sessions. So as this topic today, Sustainable Energy Islands. Well, I guess you all have know that this is important for Southeast Asia. Why? Because we are consist of thousands and thousands of islands. And I would like to, before starting, I would like to tell you why it's important to discuss about this. First of all, we have massive natural resources, potential that an island provides. Also, with that resources, natural resources that can be invested as energy resources. Also, it is very good to realize that there are energy transitions happening. Of course, we listen to that all the time, especially it was mentioned in the opening remarks yesterday. And also there are commercializations of new clean energies that should be encouraged for the next generations. So especially knowing that islands, many islands in Southeast Asia, they are not electrified yet. And it should be aligned with investing sustainable energies or renewable energies to fulfill these electricity needs. So that's what we're going to discuss about two panelists. More or less how much islands' potentials can be explored and expanded as implementations of energy systems, and what are the most attractive technologies. Well, here with me today, we have very amazing panelists. First of all, we have Matthew Rowe, the Director Power Grids Asia Pacific in DNV. We have Nicolas Leong as Energy Business Director in North and Southeast Asia from Wärtsilä Energy. We have Daniel Tampubolon, the Senior Manager of Planning in PLN UIWNTT, and Leon as the Managing Partner in Energy Investment Management, and also Xiaoyang Peng, the Research and Development and Program Manager for Smart Grid Program in Engie Labs Singapore. Well, we're going to directly start our session. First of all, I would like to ask questions first to Matthew. Well, as your experiences and your background, can you please share your insights on the current sustainable energy system trends happening in islands?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and it's great to be here today. It's really exciting to see the potential of energy islands across Asia. And there's all sorts of very interesting trends happening that are driving that behavior. In fact, I was reading a report from the World Bank that they published looking at costs, and they were predicting that the cost that we can deliver energy islands by 2030 will drop by 2/3. And that's a significant amount. And I think a lot of the sort of opportunities we have could be unraveled as the costs drop. I think also some of the opportunities will be driven by sort of future partnerships that we can develop as the technology costs drop and people begin to match up the concept of the challenge that they have on their island and then the technology that can actually come and help solve that opportunity. So a lot of the work we do at DNV is helping understand, you know, here is the island, here's the energy demand as it is at the moment, either based on sort of data that we can get out the system or just making approximations, and then understanding like what technology mix and what's the sort of techno-economic value in being able to create an islanded system there. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities being able to connect a huge more amount of people to the grid and being able to get more people electricity as well.
All right, thank you for your answer. Since your role is mainly in power grids, I would like to ask, how do you view on prioritizing the development of microgrids in islands?
Yeah, I think the grid's one of the biggest challenges here as well, because there's lots of different ways in which we can develop the grids to be able to do it in a sort of cost-effective way. In fact, one of the projects we were working on actually, the investor ended up not going ahead with the project because they were worried about what would happen when the island, in case the islanded system, which was a big island, was eventually connected to the main grid. They said, you know, what would happen if it became connected, and their investment would just become deferred because there was no regulation in place to be able able to protect that investment. I mean, actually, the countries that we see that have got more mini grids connected to their islands are where there's regulation in place to protect the investments that are made, to give them sort of reassurance of what's going to happen when that goes in. One interesting project we were doing at the moment, or we were supporting in Thailand with an island, was an island that has an interconnection to it, and the interconnector kept dropping out. There was issues with the technology, there was issues with sort of the amount of energy that could come, and so we helped an investor put in place an energy storage system and a battery that they could use to store energy for some parts of the day, so that when the peak demand came, they could supply some of that energy from the peak demand. So actually, some of these aging grids that we see can be also reinforced with sort of new technologies as well.
Okay, thank you. That is a very interesting answer. Where I would like to go to Mr. Leon Puls for the next questions about, do you think that these islands have an ability to flourish renewable energy, and what are the impacts on such energy transitions on the islands itself?
I think islands are very well positioned to make the energy transition. I bring some experiences from Europe, where you see that the European Union is really facilitating the economic development of islands, and by investing in clean energy. You see that when you quite spend some time, as already Matthew said, on making an energy transition agenda, looking to what is a good growth path for your technology development. I think a lot of islands, they have technology like from Wärtsilä on their island, and it's good to overthink what are good growth steps to make these steps. And then I think there is quite an interesting case to make when you can add solar, when you can add wind, when you can add other renewable resources to your grid to create a more carbon efficient and robust system.
All right, thank you for sharing your answers. So Leon also has views from the European region. Now we're going to go to ask more or less the experience from Nicolas Leong, since you have experience in Southeast Asian region. How is the renewable energy ecosystem going on in such islands right now?
Thanks. I think for me, this topic is very close to my heart, because I was myself born on an island of Mauritius. Then I had lived half of my life in the city island of Singapore, and now I'm based in Japan, a big island. So I think I can say I'm an islander, right? So I think for us, Wärtsilä, I think we have been very active in Southeast Asia and many islands, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and other places, because I think what in the past we were trying to bring affordable power to the people, and maybe the topic is sustainable energy, but maybe let me add a bit of oil to the discussion, because that's where Wärtsilä started, with the engine on the diesel engine, right? And I think those islands needed affordable power, right? That's why we need to give power to these people. But now what we are trying to do with our team, we are seeing how can we try to decarbonize those assets? How can we convert them from diesel to cleaner fuel like natural gas? We're also looking at how, for example, we can look at hybrids, right? Because I think one fuel or one technology cannot solve the problem of the islands, right? So there's a place for hybrids. For example, you have an existing diesel power plant running. Maybe you add some renewable to it, some solar, wind, and even you can add some storage. But the thing is, what is important, you need to do the right feasibility study. You need to work like people like yourself to see how can we see the lowest cost of electricity. Sometimes it's very, it's not easy to just, okay, I want some hybrids, but I think it's really important to approach it through analytic. And maybe our colleague from Engie, maybe he has some interesting project that maybe he want to share about this kind of how different technology can work together. And then if you have a good energy management system sitting on that, telling them what to do, when to dispatch, and how to make money, that could be interesting, yeah.
Thank you for sharing your answer. So as you have said, there are actually various possibilities for these islands to grow. But of course, we have to make the right move, the right decisions. So what is? So next, I'm going to ask to Xiaoyang, with your background, what do you think are the most attractive technologies that should be in today's energy systems in islands?
Thank you. It's a very good question. What is the most, sorry, could I?
Attractive technologies.
Okay. Yeah. The most attractive technologies, I think for us as a Engie, as a system integrator, I would say it's the most suitable technologies locally. So what I mean is that there is no single technology that we should be focusing on. There are so many different technologies that are in the market, that are viable, that can work. And the way that we see is that for each of the different locations and different regions, how we can utilize what's there and deploy the most suitable technologies to the region. For instance, if you have abundant solar, if you have you put solar PV, if you have sufficient wind, you put wind turbine, and then of course, as Matthew rightfully mentioned, we have to look at how it's the most cost-effective way to combine them together. And also, thanks Nicolas for mentioning that, how you can also integrate everything together, to make everything work as we want it to be and optimize the system, further reduce the cost. And I think that's the way forward. It's really the technology that is most suitable for the location.
All right, thank you for sharing your thoughts. So at the end of the day, it depends again what are resources are there and what is actually needed. So talking about technologies, we also have Daniel Tampubolon, a representative from PLN, and you are actually in island projects in Nusa Tenggara, if I'm not mistaken. So could you please share your insights on the current transitions occurring based on your experience in Nusa Tenggara?
Thank you. My name is Daniel. Well, in PLN, I've traveled from Sumatra Island to the most eastern part of Indonesia, Merauke. So I must say that Indonesia consists of a huge number of islands, like more than 13,000 of islands. And in the region that I'm assigned right now in East Nusa Tenggara, we have, I put some note, 1,192 islands, and in which 42 of them are inhabited. And until now, the electrification ratio is still at 92%. This number has increased a lot, significantly, if we look back in 2017, where we only have like 57% electrification ratio. So we can talk variety of technology that can adopt it to achieve electrification ratio, but it will drive us to the techno-economic feasibility study that we will face in the process. If I'm not mistaken, if I calculate it correctly, we're gonna have to spend like 35.7 million US dollars to only increase up to 1.5%. So in case of East Nusa Tenggara, to achieve the other 8%, becoming 100%, we're gonna need like 143 million US dollars. So the struggling that we have, I'm not gonna say the struggling. People who are not still electrified struggling, but PLN, as a big company, still have a big responsibility to electrify all the villages that locates in the very remote islands. Islands that we cannot really imagine how to get there, how to even get there, how to transport fuel, and how to even construct any solar power plant project. So coming from the utility, I must say this is a fight that is really worth to fight for, but we have to formulate the best techno-economic project. Maybe That's the thing that I want to highlight first. Yeah.
All right, thank you for sharing your thoughts. So the needs are there, the resources are there, but of course, as today's discussion, we knew that it also must come with a big and bold move, because not only building an infrastructure from scratch, but also enabling new technologies. It appears more questions for me today. So next, I'm going to ask from Nicolas. Maybe about a little bit in the business side, where, as you know, it might be a challenge when it comes to initial investments, especially in small islands of renewable energy. So how do you see this issue, Nicolas?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think I can totally understand what our dear friend from PLN, because I think Wärtsilä is very, active in Indonesia, trying to bring affordable to the people. I think that in terms of business case, I think that's also work with consultant. I think it's also important that when you have those small islands scattered around, I think what is important is try to make it into packages. I think in the past there was many tenders or the project that has been grouped in package, right? Package 1, 2, 3, 5. So I think it's important that you can actually bring all these small projects together so that you can get really the economy of scale. Because if not, you will not get big players. You might not get the right technology or right system integrator to come in, because they might look at it, oh, that project, 5 megawatt, not interesting. But maybe if you take 10 project of 5 megawatt, 50 megawatt, you can get more participation, and I think also you have the economies of scale. So I think, yes, I do agree that sometimes when you look at the numbers, it doesn't make sense. So I think that's why we sometimes need a bit of participation, that, that if you do this small project, maybe there's a bigger one, or try to aggregate. Yeah, I think that's something that it's a big problem. It's a chicken and egg, right? Because if you say, oh, we can't start big because we don't have the small one, so what do we do? So I think it's really something that is a big $1 million question, I would say. Yeah, maybe Matthew, you want to add something on that, I think?
No, I mean, it's exactly what we see as well. We do a lot of work for the investment industry, and I think there's different kinds of financing. I think overall, though, I completely agree. We've got to see more portfolios and more system-level thinking, because for the investors to go through the level of effort they need to do for a small system, and the cost of capital that we will see into those projects is huge compared to if they're actually aggregated together and they can put them in. But I also think the development banks play a role here as well. I think it would be, people like the GIZs, the ABDs, and actually seeing money that they put in where they take on higher risk initially, and then allowing someone else to come in and take those out once they've gone through the challenges of the construction, like the colleague from PLM was talking about. And once they're mature, they've seen the revenue that is flowing back in from the communities, and then having someone else come in and purchase them. And I think, yeah, we need to see sort of more innovation around how we finance these systems as well. And I completely agree with what Nicolas is saying.
What is, I think, interesting to add, we did a research in the south of Europe, how there the energy transition was financed on islands. And there you saw that public money, or I call it public money, plays quite an important role. And I think also in Southeast Asia, there is maybe also where World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and other more money with the social, that want to make a social impact, can help PLN to make the transition. And I think when the risks are, when the project is developed, when the project is realized, then you have a different risk profile, and then maybe also other investors can come in. So it's, I think also in the financing side, you see there quite some innovations that could really help that energy transition. And especially you see more and more money coming available to make a social impact. And I think that's also, when you look to islands, maybe also you should not maybe take a rather commercial view, but also look at the social aspects. And I think there are things really happening and changing.
Maybe if I may, I would like to touch a bit on what our colleague from PLN said about fuel. I think that's also important, because if there's no fuel, there's no power plant, right? So I think if you look at the case of Indonesia, you have so many islands, right? And I think too, we don't have pipe gas, right? So to bring LNG there is possible, but you need to have a milk run, right, to get small-scale LNG to all these places. So I think that it's kind of difficult. I think it's a massive investment. So maybe, if you look at those islands, I think definitely having, renewable there as, let's say, the base load, solar or wind turbines, I think is possible. But as we all know, renewable is not, it's act of God, right? It's intermittent. So today you have sun, tomorrow you may not have. So what do? People still need to charge their phone 24/7, right? They just want to have electricity and press the switch. So maybe we will still need some diesel, unfortunately. But maybe also we could look at perhaps cleaner fuel, like maybe biodiesel, this kind of thing. Because I think we still need some kind of backup thermal fuel, unfortunately. Because unfortunately, we need power, people need power 24/7, and renewable right now with the technology is not available. You can do some storage, but long duration storage is not there. So maybe I will just want to see the view of the panelists. What do you think about having those thermal fuels for the islands, maybe?
Can I jump in?
Sure, of course.
Thank you, Nicolas. I think, I understand that you already understand what is the landscape of island electrification. So that's entirely true. If I talk to our engineers, they will say that, sir, we still need this diesel generator. Yeah. Because if we rely on the solar, the local renewable energy resources, that's good. Yeah, that is really good. And that match with our energy transition move in PLN as well. But we need the energy now. Yeah? Nicolas said that, the gentleman said that we have to figure out the best way to finance this project. But the people needs the energy now. So I think we're gonna do it in steps. The first, we cannot really eliminate all the diesel generators. We have this 1,000 unit de-dieselization program, and it's under procurement right now, if I'm not mistaken. But management take the steps carefully, really carefully, because we're gonna need a prompt solution, immediate solution, and diesel generator, unfortunately, is still the primary solution. And I want to add also, we have this, we call it PMN, Penanaman Modal Negara, or equity, or state equity participation. So most of our projects that is not really feasible financially will be financed by the government. Yeah. The problem is the amount of money, the amount of capital. It's really limited. And if we follow the average number of PMN, or state equity participation, it will take like more than 5 years to get 100% electrification. So I agree that we have to fasten up all the technology needed to optimize the renewable energy resources. And also, I would like to raise some discussion regarding the submarine cable. You see, the most important thing is to have a regional balance. Say in East Nusa Tenggara, we have 3 big islands. We have Flores Island, we have Timor Island, and we have Sumba Island. Yeah. Sumba Island, the one who compete with Australia to provide solar energy to Singapore. So we have 3 big islands, but we still have hundreds of or thousands of small islands that need to be electrified. So technologies need to be also pushed, reinforced, to get a cheaper capital to do submarine cabling. By doing that, well, half of our problem can be solved. Yeah. That's my opinion. Thank you.
All right, maybe from Xiaoyang, would you like to add any from your opinion? We had an open discussion from Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, I think maybe I jumped to the very first very first point regarding to have a roadmap to reach carbon neutrality. That's something that we're looking at. In fact, we had done a kind of a sociological study with some island residents like 6 years ago to talk about renewable energy generation. But as our colleague said, it's very true. When you talk to the residents, what they care is, I have electricity, and I have a stable electricity, continuous income, and that's it. They don't care if it is green, if it is brown, if it is black, whatever. And that's something that we have to accommodate. We cannot impose what we are doing in one region or in one city to another region. And that's not the right way, sociologically speaking. And I think when I would also like to address the last point on the subsea cables. I think there are a lot of initiatives in the region, from Australia, from Indonesia, subsea cables connection through Singapore, etc., etc. I think it's really great initiative, to be honest. The problem is also the cost, I guess, and also, of course, on top of the cost, the policies, especially cross-country policies, and it will not be easy. I think we have to put down everything on the table and look at the timeline, and again, look at a roadmap, towards, let's say, 100% electrification, and how that could be realized. I don't know, maybe we realize in the beginning we should still do diesel in the first beginning, and when HVO e-fuels are available, we replace them, or LNG which is closer to the market, and then we gradually have a renewable energy generation. And then when the subsea cable comes, finally, I think we can drastically reduce the cost of the, reduce the compensation from the government, etc. So it's kind of a roadmap. And of course, we want to make it as fast as possible, as we have commitments, but it will take time.
Okay, would you like to add anything up, Matthew?
I was going to ask, add on the subsea cables. We're doing a lot of work at the moment with key stakeholder on the Singapore imports studies that you mentioned, and also on other interconnections and both submarine, but also on land interconnected cables. And it's very interesting to see how the market's developing, because ultimately, to really drive the prices down of the technology, but also drive down and challenge the cable manufacturers around like the amount of carbon that is going into their cables, for example, combined with trying to reduce the costs, is really difficult at the moment. We are seeing huge HVDC cables being installed in Europe and North America at the moment, which is great, and that's helping the sort of cable supply chains. But the business case for these systems is still very difficult, and this is exactly what Singapore's got to weigh up at the moment, is around like how much does it value energy resiliency and being able to actually rely on itself versus being able to rely on policies that could change. And if you look at what's happened with the war in Ukraine and how Europe's being now split and moved around. Even countries like Norway, which had very friendly and open political boundaries with other countries, are beginning to restrict the amount of electricity in which they export to other countries. And so, yeah, I completely agree that there's huge political and regulatory challenges that need to be overcome, as well as the technical ones. But ultimately, if we can bring the cost of that technology down, connecting a lot of these islands like you're talking about is going to be so much easier than trying to build some of these other systems as well. And yeah, no, actually, I'll pause there at the moment. Thanks.
All right, thank you for sharing. Maybe Leon or Nicolas, would you like to add up to the issue?
I think you're pointing also to Europe. There you see at this moment quite some interesting developments. A lot to learn there. What doesn't went so well. Sometimes you have the feeling that liberalization and privatization of the energy sector was not so successful in Europe, looking to the energy transition from that perspective. So I'm happy that PLN is still in a good shape from that perspective. Yeah, you see there that countries are more and more looking for themselves, but also island solutions. We work a lot with Greece, another country with a lot of islands. There you see that, energy districts, energy neutral districts. There are quite some developments there, and the big question is, one is technology, how fast technology will develop. or what kind of solutions can be further developed with existing technology. At the other side, it's also, I think it's more related to stakeholder engagement. What are people willing to do? You see in the islands in Europe, you see quite some commitment to make a sustainable change. And that really helps also, to that energy transition. I think there's also still a lot of work to do in Indonesia. We work together with SBM ITB, the MBA of ITB in Jakarta on policy development. I think, especially when you look to the numbers of islands in Indonesia, then it is really makes sense to spend some time to make a proper plan and to really look to all kinds of accelerators that could help that energy transition. I think there also Indonesia doesn't have to solve it themselves. There are a lot of more islands in the region, and so it's quite interesting, what we see in Europe, and you cannot simply copy it to Asia, but I think it's still a lot of things to learn, and also where didn't went that well, that is also good to learn.
Maybe, I mean, you mentioned Europe, and I think that's ring a bell with me. I think I just would like to share a project that we have worked. So I think we spoke about the numbers, the finance. We spoke about cables, hardware and technology. I think something that we did not mention here, I would like just to bring up to the attention to the audience and the panel. I think the value of software, because having a good energy management system is key, because you may have the right connection cable, you may have the right technology, but if you don't have a software who actually tell them what to do when you have those island grids is key. So many years back, we were actually asked to look at an island in Portugal, the Azores Island, where basically it's an island. So they had solar, they have wind, they had diesel generator, they had some batteries, but they were not able to actually to make the best of let's say on a particular day, based on the sun, based on the wind, and when to run the genset. So basically what they want to do is to have the best levelized cost of electricity for that particular day. So sometimes when there's sun, you need to dispatch the sun, and then of course the diesel generation less, and that's where you can save money on the fuel. So that's where it's important that when we went in, we basically look at this whole system and make it work as a true hybrid, and basically combining, weather forecasts, knowing how is the weather tomorrow, how is the wind, together with what's the best way to have the best savings. And I think we are doing that, and we managed to help that island to be very optimal by, combining the best of both worlds, meaning the best of renewable, but also the best of diesel genset, because it's needed. And I think I completely agree with you, Park, that, people doesn't care when they press the switch. They want to have power. Yes, let's say from the Western world, we can say, energy transition, you need to be clean. But go and tell this to these people, green energy, but for them, they just want to have power at night, to go on with their life. So I think this energy transition is going to be a bit more longer for islands compared to other developed countries, because definitely they will need to rely now and maybe for years to come on diesel, and hopefully become, switching hopefully to gas at some point, and then renewable will take over, and maybe some sustainable fuel like hydrogen or ammonia, right? But that's, let's say, the reality, and I think we need to face it, and even for our side, it's something that we can do. So what we can do is to basically optimize the system, try to get the best of both worlds, and then as we go, as the technology improves, I'm sure costs will decrease on the solar panel, wind turbines, and batteries, and hopefully the LNG price will go down again. So maybe that's something I just want to add, the perspective of software, of having a good energy management system in those microgrid or smart grid, because sometimes we tend to forget about that, but that's something important to make it smart. So back to you.
All right, thank you for sharing your views. Well, our discussion has led into many discussions about having a drawbacks actually in investing in building projects in islands. But of course, what we must know is that different islands have different difficulties, also different problems. And what I highlighted as very interesting is that we have difficulties in access is because islands are very far away. Maybe some are not electrified yet, some are very far away from the grids. So every different islands have different starting points. Of course, that's very interesting. The thing is, my question, maybe to all panelists, you can answer one by one, is that what is the ideal starting point for an island to have projects for sustainable energies to build in? Maybe we could start from Matthew.
Yeah, sure. There's probably lots of different areas. Maybe to talk about a case study we were working on an island in the Philippines. I think it's Tabalis, which is, mind my pronunciation, but it's an island of about 150,000 people, and it was purely run on diesel. And we basically the island identified that there might be a more sustainable and cheaper way they could actually deliver their energy to the people on the island. And it's got a university. It's a big place. But they found the first biggest challenge was finding partnerships. So actually being able to say, okay, we've got this problem. Like, how do we go about trying to solve it? They actually, when we looked at the case and we were brought in to help understand, how can they do this, it was an ideal case study because the diesel wasn't the easiest to transport to the island. Actually, they were using a huge amount of diesel. They had a fair amount of spare land. And so it then naturally led to the fact that actually with a third-party investor, that somebody could come in and install a significant amount of solar. But then once we ran the numbers for the solar, it didn't really make sense because when they were using their demand was at a completely different time of day to when the sun was out. And so actually, in that case, a battery made sense. Actually, what would have made more sense from a sort of perfect technology world that we'd all like to live in would be a huge battery, but from an economic perspective, that didn't work. And so, but a small battery was able to shift some of that energy later. And so, yeah, I think it's a variety of these different traits where people identify that there's the opportunity based on the resources, like my colleague here was talking about, and the space that they have available, combined with the financing mechanisms that allow you to put together one of these kind of projects. So yeah, that's a case study that we talked through.
Thank you for your insights. Maybe Xiaoyang, perhaps you would like to add to the issue.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, it was what is the ideal starting points for a project to be in an island?
Well, I think Matthew talks about more from the global point of view, so I'm not going to dig into, from a financial and how we kickstart the project. But from me personally, I think looking at the technology side of things, yeah, it really comes down to it depends again, because there are so many technologies that are available. And what we are trying to see is what really makes sense from a step-by-step kind of approach to reach our final target, be it a global final target of carbon neutrality or a nearer target to be, to solve the issue of electrification. So I would like also to share a little bit what we are doing in Singapore. So we're trying to build an entire system on the remote island, actually, of Singapore, which, we bring wind turbine there, we bring solar panels, battery system, hydrogen system, in order to test how we can deploy those systems and then how we can optimize those systems. So throughout this exercise and everything, we get the insights of how this system could be, how they operate, how they can combine, and how we can, from a next level, how we can gradually deploy them, in the remote location, depending on all those aspects combined together. So yeah, so that's what I would add. And if you're happy, you can also join us for a tour on the island. So there is a very interesting story behind it, and we can see how we can gradually really to electrify and reach to a goal of energy transition in the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
From maybe just three quick, what comes to my mind, 3 steps. I think first I would say assess. I think we need to look at what are the legacy, power plants exist and what source of fuel. Second, is planned. So you need to do proper planning, proper modeling to see how you want to build that ecosystem. And I think third one is future-proof. So you need, when you do your planning, think about the future. How can you how can you go to sustainable fuel and to go hybrids? Because if you build something just for today, maybe a few years down the road, your asset will be obsolete. So you're not doing the right thing. So really, assess, plan, and future-proof. That's my 3 words for islands to be sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas, and also thank you, Xiaoyang. Before Leon, maybe you would like to give your view on this issue?
I think a lot of items are already mentioned, so it's maybe another aspect to look at is, I think, also getting the people on board. So technology is there, good planning is needed, as already mentioned, but getting the people on board in a good way, I think is very important, that they really understand what is the system today, how the system in the future will look like, what it will bring to them. I think that's very important to do.
Thank you, Leon, for your insights. Last but not least, maybe Daniel, please.
Thank you. I think most of the answers have been answered by the gentleman. From my point of view, there are 5 main steps. The first one is, thank you, Mr. Xiaoyang. We have to establish a sound roadmap. Secondly, from the perspective of technology, I think the first, the starting point should be hybrid for us, hybrid. So maybe diesel with solar, diesel with hydro, or diesel with storage. And then from the perspective of finance, we have to find a source of fund. And maybe the feasibility studies should be widened up to include the externality. And then from the point of view of customer behavior, that should be managed. I agree with Mr. Nicolas. We have to include as well energy management system, especially in my point of view, the demand side management. So I have a story. Once we build the solar power plant, and then the next 3 months, the battery cannot supply because the demand raised significantly. So it's really important. The first thing that we do in East Nusa Tenggara is to put energy meter. So we ask the manufacturer of meter to put some algorithm in that. So there will be energy limiter. If not, the investment will keep continuing so much. And then lastly, from the point of view of stakeholders, we need synergy and collaboration on that.
Thank you. Well, great. That is a very interesting discussion we had today with all the panelists. We had discussed, besides what I said before, the drawbacks, a lot of drawbacks in different countries, especially Southeast Asia, but also all the panelists have gave solutions to it, and is also a very broad variety to it. Last, I would like to announce also to all of you, what you have to remember is that in Southeast Asia, again, there are many untapped renewable energy potential, and it is also untold. But at the same time, it hasn't been utilized for a good use of electricity. Although there are many attempts, maybe your projects, you have a lot of attempts to adopt these clean technologies, but there are also many challenges out there, such as difficulties of fundings, maybe due to unwanted risks. Also, there are less infrastructures, facilities, difficult access, as you all have mentioned before, and also, last but not least, the social development to the locals. That's also their drawbacks. So it should be noticeable, and for that matter, we need extensive collaborations. That is what I like to highlight today. We need extensive collaborations from all sectors, also including to educate locals to transform together with the energy transitions. So I would like to thank you to Leon, Nicolas, Matthew, Xiaoyang, and Daniel for sharing your views, your thoughts to all the audience today. Thank you to all the audience for being here and listening. I'm going to close today's sessions. The title is Sustainable Energy Islands. I hope it's very helpful. So thank you once again. Good afternoon.